Okay, so I'll call the meeting to order at 7:30. We do have all our commissioners tonight. Is there any public comment? Laura, was there anything? No,
Not unless there's somebody on the meeting right now
okay.
that wants to make a comment. I don't have anything.
Bill, have you let anyone in?
There are a couple people popping in. So if there's any member of the public who would like to speak, you can press the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. And if you're on the phone, press *9, and we've got Mr. Favretto. So we'll bring him in first.
Okay, Mr. Favretto, if you have something to say, you can. I see your mic is off. Okay.
Hello.
Hi, go ahead. Just name and address for the record, please.
Jonpaul Favretto, 213 Pinewood Trail. Would I talk about the tennis courts at Unity and the use of maybe switching them over to full-time pickleball courts? I sent a letter in, I believe in July, with pictures of the condition of the courts there. And I know there's been talk in the past about making some of those courts at Unity dedicated pickleball courts. I see you have it on the agenda today. I know there's been $375,000 dedicated to redoing the courts there at Unity, and I think it's a project that needs to be done sooner rather than later because of the condition and the amount of people that we have playing over in Shelton recently because the courts at Unity are just unplayable. It's the fastest growing sport in America, and it's something that I'm trying to build here in town and like to do a youth program. As you know, most people playing right now are seniors, and there are some young players coming in, and I think there's nothing better to do in this community than have seniors teaching younger kids how to play a game together. So I'd really like to see this happen, and playing on tennis courts that are cracked just isn't working. So that's all I need to say. Thank you.
Okay, Jonpaul, thank you for your comments. Commissioners, any questions for him? No? Okay, thank you.
Appreciate your
Anything
time.
else, Bill?
If there's anybody else who'd like to speak, you can press the raise hand button. Mr. Chairman, doesn't look like there's anybody else at this time.
Okay, thank you. We will close. Can I have a motion to close from public comment and return to our regular meeting? Okay,
I'll make a
Brian,
motion.
second.
Second.
Okay, second, Ed. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, return to our meeting. Acceptance of minutes. Do we have any additions, deletions, or corrections to the monthly minutes for October? If there are none, could someone make a motion to accept the minutes of last month? Nancy, second. Mike, all in favor? Just give a hand vote. Okay, unanimous. Okay, moving on, correspondence. I forwarded some correspondence that I had. There were two emails in regards to pickleball, one in favor of adding more courts or adding more dedicated courts, and the other one was the same thing, adding more courts as well as allowing the pickleballers to park at Unity. And the third correspondence that I forwarded you was the gentleman who was told that he needed a permit in order to throw a baseball on one of the Unity Park ball fields. I did forward those on to you people. So
Yes.
that was correspondence. Is that it, Laura? You didn't get anything else recently? No? Okay. Moving on to old business. Does anybody have some old business that we'd like to bring up? I know there's one topic that Attorney Schopick is here with us tonight. Is there anybody that would like to bring up an item? Okay, so the main item under old business is I guess what we do with people who don't want to follow the park permit rules and want to circumvent them by saying that it's a peaceful protest or it's a political gathering. And that happened to us last month. And they did not want to do the proper permit process. And we were just wondering, Attorney Schopick, how we should best handle someone who does not want to, address our proper protocols.
I'm not sure, Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure how readily I can answer the question. Certainly, if, as I understand it, also there was if I'm thinking of the correct situation, there was a scheduled game on the field and that had to be moved or canceled in order to make room for the for this particular event. Is that correct?
That is correct. This particular event we're speaking of is the one that we had the meeting with the first selectman and the police chief and Dimitri and you and I think another attorney or so from your office. And we just wanted to know moving forward, if this happens again, the best way to handle it. We were instructed with the duty to come up with a feasible way to handle this.
Well, I think first of all, the question is whether you have a written policy or you don't have a written policy. And I'm gathering that there's not specifically a written policy with regard to this type of event. I certainly don't think that as I look at it, and again, the issue was thrust at us at the last minute, people saying we're going to have our event, and then trying to, I think ultimately we said we'll get the permit and then we'll let you go there. But I don't think that if there is a pre-existing permit, that if there's a group that's out there, I wouldn't necessarily say that we have to allow a political, a protest. You might have to provide or come up with some alternate venue for the protest. So you can't use Indian Ledge Park because there's an event going on there, but you could use Unity Park, or you could use the Town Hall Green, or you could use Twin Brooks or whatever. I think that's not an unreasonable thing to say. And maybe that's something that we can. We also don't necessarily need to charge for the permit, but there still can be a permit process, so that we're not saying you can't exercise your First Amendment rights. What we're saying is that there are just certain protocols we need to go through. We might need to determine whether we need police protection. We might need to determine whether there should be a park ranger there. We might need to. There's all sorts of things that are not unreasonable to go through. So I would say that maybe we can devise a permit. First of all, I would say the policy should be that if there's another if there's another event planned on that particular field or that particular park, that should take precedence. Somebody was, is supposed to have been there. But then I don't think there's anything wrong with devising a permit application for some group that wants to have is planning to have a rally of some sort, so that the town reasonably can determine what's going to happen there, and as I say, what kind of facilities need to be put in place. I think we've had some discussions over time about are there proper toilet facilities in the place where people want to have a rally? Are there other things? Are there so those are things that I would point out, and then see what Dimitri may have some bigger problems with it. I don't know. He's sitting there mute, but and I usually don't know him to be mute. So
Well, I'm sure Dimitri will chime in, but I believe those were things that were tried. Somebody was already scheduled at the field. I believe Dimitri tried to move them, saying that there's someone. They declined to move and said, we're going. They were just defiant. I think that's where we had the problem. We tried different parameters and different venues and different dates, and they were just defiant. And I think we kind of need to know what we can do as a commission, or where to go from here. Dimitri, please, you were the one that dealt with this, the organizer. So if you could chime in a little bit.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that is accurate. A lot of the things that Attorney Schopick was suggesting, I did offer up as alternatives. I'm not sure really whether or not everything had been set up to a point where it couldn't change, but the bottom line was both the time, date, and location were not up for discussion for that particular event, and then it created the conflict. I think for our sake, we just need to know whether or not a political rally, something that is defined as a political rally or a plan to protest or of the like, by definition, should take priority and precedence over anything else that's in the park. And if it is, then we can probably craft a comprehensive policy from there. But I mean, that's the first step. Can that actually be denied for any reason, or whether or not that's just a choice to deny it? That's the first question. Then, as you said, we could, the commission could determine under those conditions, fees could be waived for a right of free assembly, freedom of speech, etc., and put together whatever else. On the back end, if in fact you had a situation similar to what we had, where somebody was recalcitrant and was refusing to comply, what happens then? What rights does the commission or does the town have at their disposal to prohibit or fine? I mean, it gets very, very complicated after a point. So I think those are the two ends. On the leading end, is it always a go or not? And on the back end, if there are problems, what are the ramifications, if any, that can be applied? Those would be my questions.
I think one of the things, in my opinion, you certainly have a right to give preference to a group that, if you have a soccer game scheduled at a particular field, I don't think it's unreasonable to, and everything, in this particular instance, everything came up at the last minute, or at least in my domain, it came up at the last minute. But I think if you publicize that there is a permit process, that the town will attempt to accommodate any legitimate rally or political political expression, and to say on the other side of it that we're asking those people who want to schedule events to respect the fact that there are groups that have planned athletic events at these particular fields, and will attempt to find an alternate venue for you. And if we publicize it enough, maybe you get more cooperation. I certainly, you know, a lot of these things always come down to it doesn't matter what's right or wrong. We certainly don't want to have a situation where we call the police out and they start, you know, pointing guns at demonstrators. This is not something that we want. We're right or wrong. We don't want to have that kind of a situation. So it does become a matter of trying to work with people, and there is no perfect solution. If you get a group that is absolutely adamant, we have to be at Old Mine Park from 3 to 5 on next Tuesday, and we can't move it from 1 to 3, and we can't move it to Twin Brooks, and we can't move it to, you know, it's like, well, we have a permit process, and you know, it's put them in line in the permit process, and if they don't have a permit, then we don't expect them to be there. We can work, you know, we can work on trying to come up with, craft something that makes some sense.
Well, Dee, isn't that pretty much what happened? We were just looking for, is there any punitive measures on our part as a commission?
Well, you can find them. You can call them names. You can. I mean, it's a you know, you say punitive. The only thing punitive is if you want to start calling the police out and making arrests, and I don't think we want to do that unless they're causing riots or, you know, that sort of thing. But it is a very difficult situation, and you're always balancing the right of free expression and free assembly against other needs of the community. Probably haven't given you the answer you're looking for, but there is no perfect answer to this.
Right, obviously it's difficult. That's why we were given the task of coming up with something, and I don't know how easy it is to come up with something, basically.
Well, I think if we, you know, get a few of us together and try to work on something, I don't think it's, you know, we're not going to do it at a full committee meeting, but or commission meeting, but we certainly can, if we kind of, you know, get to me what everybody's primary concerns are, and people may have thoughts, you know, it's not, we can, you know, look to see what other communities are doing and how they're dealing with it. Sometimes there's no particular reason to reinvent the wheel if somebody has invented it adequately. So I certainly would see what similar communities in the area are doing. And you know, again, I don't know whether CCM, I see Kathy's here. I don't know whether CCM has any help for us on this, but it's something we can work on, and maybe by your meeting next month, I'll be able to say, here's a proposal.
Okay, any commissioners for questions for the attorney while he's here? Ken?
Yes.
How are you, Ken?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I just wonder how you're doing.
Good, Dan. Thank you very much. I appreciate the fact that you're here. And I guess, you know, my concern, this goes back to, let's say, quote, a policy. My understanding has always been that the Parks Commission does have a policy. They have a permit policy. And what disturbs me most about this particular request, or not even an application, is that someone who was, and to your point, someone was already scheduled, a group was already scheduled for Indian Ledge, and they were basically bumped, you know, for this group who were demanding this site. And I think that, again, if perhaps this person or this individual or this organization came to the Parks Commission, which is what they're supposed to do when they want to use the parks, perhaps we would have come up with a different plan that we could all could have discussed, and not jostled around a group that followed the process, the permit process, scheduling, went through our commission and did what they were supposed to do. So to come up with another policy, for, let's say, rallies or protests, I mean, you need a permit for whatever you're doing. You just can't go into a park. And I think the permit process is really what holds. And perhaps maybe the permitting issuance maybe needs to be better defined rather than just a change of policy. So I don't know. I do feel like it goes back to the issue of people making requests outside of the commission and then basically getting what they want without any input from our board or our commission. And I think that we need to be notified and we need to be informed and we need to have a conversation together to come up with a plan or a response to whatever the request is.
I have no argument with you.
Kevin? Yeah, if I think maybe we do need a clarification on the policy for this situation with a rally or a protest, because sometimes I think they arise rather quickly from an issue of the day. And I do agree they need to get a permit. I don't know necessarily think that they need to come before the commission if it's not a timely thing. But if we have some parameters in the language that would suffice, I think that would be really helpful moving forward.
I agree. And Ken, I think in this case, protests and rallies are usually spur of the moment things, and I don't think they're going to want to wait till our next commission meeting to bring it to us. And I think that's one of the problems was, and when we had that special meeting for the comedian in the park, commissioners complained that we were having a special meeting outside of the meeting time. So that works both ways too. Do you want to have a special meeting every time someone has a request, or do you want to wait to the next monthly meeting? I mean, that's something we need to discuss also.
Well, I'm hoping that we can just adhere more formally to the policy that's in place. So yes, if something comes up at the spur of the moment, and in this case, Dimitri made a decision, he made the right decision based on what I guess the demands were from the individual or the organization. We still don't know who that is and what it was all about. I just like more information on what these requests are. And I think as a commission, we need to know that. Whether or not it comes through our commission or it's just decided at the last minute because it needs to be done immediately. I don't think we need to have a special meeting for every request or any request that comes through unless it's an emergency. And whether or not this is deemed an emergency, I don't know. I think it was an emergency to move another group out of the park that follow the rules to accommodate these people. I don't know who they are, and I'm not making any judgment against who they are, what they were protesting, or what they were rallying for, but it's just not fair the way that it was approached.
I agree that the process certainly was very disruptive, Ken, and the commission. The one thing about rallies that perplexed me and was weighed very heavily in the decision making on any of this is the policies as they currently stand, and I'm not suggesting that they are changed, is that permits are issued around numbers of people assembling. So it's over 200, it rightfully goes before the commission for consideration. Below 200, it's something that can be judged upon and issued internally. The problem we have with a rally or a protest is that you have no idea really what you're generating at any given time. The numbers that ultimately were generated by this event were relatively small. On the other hand, they could be incredibly large. So I think you would always have to assume, you know, the greatest possible impact when somebody were to make a request for a rally or a protest. That being said, there's a great number of limiters, both in terms of the locations that could take it, you know, that could withstand that, and essentially shutting down many of the park systems, because you can't have competing activities when you have no limit to the number of people that would be potentially joining the event. I find that to be the biggest complicator with any of it. By definition, any protest would have to go before the commission with our current policy, simply because it certainly has the potential to be over 200. And that, you know, that's really one of the things I think the commission has to look at. How does it want to deal with those events? If we want to acknowledge perhaps these types of events are allowed in the park system, then that's probably all that needs to be done to start this process, and then alert people that are interested in having these types of events that it is a requirement that they come before the commission, that there are no other options, you know, just for consideration of discussion right now.
Well, I'm also worried about, we do have the governor's mandate, you know, on the number of people at events as well. Now, so, you know, that's been reduced again. And for that reason alone, perhaps the number of people that are requesting, or the person that's requesting needs to perhaps abide by what the regulations are, or the rules are, the standards are for rolling back to phase 2. Now, I don't know if that doesn't apply because it's protests, but I'm also worried about the definition of protest and how people would be using that word to get the number of people that they may want to assemble in the park for reasons other than, quote, a protest.
I agree.
So is that something that we can do? Adjust the amount or the number of people? If there's a certain group of people or a certain amount of people that are attending the park need to come before the commission. Smaller groups in the past have been maybe allowed through the Park and Rec because they are smaller and they don't really follow or need to be under our purview. But now with the way things have changed in this world since March, perhaps we need to do that differently.
I just don't know how we can reconcile the language of a protest or a rally and somehow assume that we have the ability to apply limits. I understand why we would have limits. I agree wholeheartedly with them. I just don't know how you do it. That's the mitigating circumstance here. How do you do it? Either it's allowed, and a protest, I mean, we're gonna have somebody there with a clicker. It's not like you're letting people into a program. It defies any of those kind of those standards, which is what makes it so difficult.
Well,
I'm not sure if the governor's orders, I don't think differentiates between or among various types of people congregating. But you certainly can try to keep the numbers down if it's got, I don't know what the current numbers are. Is it 50? Is it 200? I'm not,
10, whatever it is.
I don't know. It is it is a difficult thing to deal with. But I think you can start by certainly, even if you want to take into account in anything that you put out there, that caveat that there are certain additional requirements, restrictions that have been placed on these events by governor's executive orders, and hope that that puts people in a position where they're ready to comply.
Mhm.
You
I
know,
agree
we certainly don't want to be in the position where we're having super spreaders in the town of Trumbull.
You know, there's, it's Kathy McGannon here. There's quite the conversations that go on social media that say, well, don't call it a XYZ, call it a protest. Then you don't have to worry about anything. You know, if it's, call it a rally, then you don't have to, you know, so there's, people are looking for ways around permits, or looking for ways around numbers in the park. So everything becomes, I know it's half tongue in cheek, but it's not all tongue in cheek. People are saying, well, if you call it a rally or you call it a protest, they have to allow you to do it. So your wording is going to be tough. It's going to be hard to come up with a policy that controls that, because, you know, rallies and protests are allowed. You're allowed to gather to protest your government. So that's what a lot of people are saying to do. You want to do that? Call it a protest, call it a rally.
Can I just ask what the protest was? What was this protest? I mean, was there a topic? I mean, was there an organization? I mean, we don't understand what that is. I mean, I don't understand what the protest is. Were they
And I'm
protesting?
sorry, I came in late. I'm not sure which one you're talking about.
I'm sorry, Kathy, I'm just talking to the commission in general. I mean, was this a protest, and what was the protest against?
Can I answer that? It's Vicki Tesoro. So it was a rally. I don't know if the word protest was used. Maybe Dimitri would know better than I do, but it was a Pride in Trumbull rally is the way it was billed. And so that's, I don't know any more details than that. I know there was a flyer put out that you could buy a t-shirt with the name of your family on it when you moved to Trumbull, and some other information, but that's how it was billed, as a rally in pride of Trumbull.
But it was presented to us as a
As
protest.
a pro-law enforcement rally?
Well, it wasn't, I don't know if it was billed as pro law enforcement. It was in support of our police, EMS, fire, our teachers, and just an overall pride in Trumbull was the overarching message. And I don't know, Dimitri, I don't remember anymore, to be honest. Was it asked for to be a protest? It might have been, I'm not sure.
No, it didn't bill itself with the word protest. It was a pro police pride in Trumbull rally. That was the definition that I understood it to be. But the same rules were applied to mass gathering, freedom of speech, right to assemble on a topic. So whether you are in favor or not of a given topic, the same rights were triggered. And then what do we do about those rights within the park system? How do we incorporate them?
And under this particular circumstance, this person did not initially reach out to Dimitri.
No.
This person reached out to the police, which, other groups have done that as well. I don't think they know where to go, so they went to the police first. And the chief directed this person to reach out to Parks and Rec, and this person initially did not do so. So.
Well, there again, we are with people just not following the process, and that's where the concern is. So I guess we need to talk about this or come up with some further discussion or procedure or language, with regard to the permit. They went to the police department, maybe the chief needs to be aware in case this happens again, that any questions should be forwarded on to the commission.
He is aware of that now because we had a meeting with him.
Oh, you did? Okay, that's good.
He was a former recreation commissioner, the chief.
He was?
Yeah.
I think generally speaking, I don't think the public really is aware of the process, so, and as long as I've lived in Trumbull, I don't recall any year seeing the slew of rallies, protests that we had in the last 3 or 4 months here. So, this is something that, as I said, maybe needs to be addressed in a fashion that there's something put out to the public, though the public is aware on our website somewhere, and so that they can find it, and they're aware of the process that's involved here.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
I agree.
Anyone else?
If I could just say one more thing, I'm sorry. Thank you, Kevin. You probably are aware that there's new orders out as of last Friday by the governor statewide again, and events are affected by that order. There were the amounts of people were changed. It's up on our website, the information. So this is just something that just just keeps changing. This could be what is out there this week, and 2 weeks from now it can change again. So hopefully when this finally goes away, we won't be dealing with this type of thing where it's so changeable. The information that people are not even aware of, because it changes from literally 1 week to the next with the the virus surging at this point. So
Okay, anyone else for the attorney or the first selectman while we have them here? No. Okay, moving on. So at this point in time, how do we leave this then?
I think we're going to have some discussion. From my perspective, I think I'd like to see exactly, if we can add a couple of paragraphs to your existing permit process, and then be able to, come back and get it approved and put it on the website, and try to publicize the fact to people that there are requirements and restrictions, and not meant to abridge anybody's First Amendment rights, but that there are other considerations in determining where and how an event can take place.
That sound good, Dimitri?
Yes,
Mhm.
definitely.
Dimitri doesn't disagree with anything I say, so it's.
All right, anyone else on this topic? No, okay, all right, moving on. We're still on old business. Is there any other old business that needs to be brought before the commission?
Just have a question.
Okay, Ken.
I'm not sure if this would fall under old business or acceptance of the minutes, but I noticed on the website that our minutes have not been posted since June. And I was hoping that that could be updated.
That's being updated.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else under old business? And Laura, another thing, when you do the minutes, could you just send them to the commissioners? As soon as the minutes are finished, just send them to the commissioners and then post it on the website. That way we have it as soon as you have it finished.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, moving to new business. Just one of that issue of the gentleman not being able to throw a ball on the league field. And he said the ranger said he needed a permit for that. Dee, could you help us out there?
Sure. I've asked the Rangers for a little more detail as to really what took place out there. And we certainly are not trying to rouse people off of baseball fields. At the same time, however, there are definitely fields that we try to prohibit certain activities in general. So, any field that's dimensioned out, we don't really want them, playing ahead of the pitcher's mound, whatever, because we put a lot of money into them, and the expectation from the leagues are that they are left in a very specific manner. So if it's just a couple of people playing, we always try to redirect them to one of the skin fields, and there's never any issue whatsoever, unless it had been groomed prior for an upcoming game, which this certainly wasn't the case. I don't have the answer as to what exactly took place. I think it was on the Babe Ruth field, though I am not sure. The way that should have played out was that should have been a simple explanation that a practice activity, even with one person, how do you separate that one person's actions from somebody else coming after it, and somebody else coming after it, and somebody else coming after it, and it being disparate treatment to a lot of different people. So in general, we just tell them to go to a field where none of those issues occur. I reiterated that policy with Steve Chapman, and he's going to promulgate that to the Rangers yet again to make sure that that is the standing protocol. We don't want to chase people away out of our parks.
Okay, he mentioned in the email that it was a 60-90 field. So
Well,
one of the skin fields.
Well, it wouldn't matter, to be honest with you. I mean, what if it was two people tossing a ball? The distance on a skin field or the 60-90 is no different, other than the distance of the pitcher's mound. There's no plates down, so they're tossing a ball, or it was actually a practice. That's the question.
Right, that's why it would be helpful to have the Rangers side too. Yeah, obviously.
Exactly. So we are looking into that, but I mean, at least on the surface, that somebody was rousted off of the field. That is not something that is our policy. It's not anything that we want to happen. We want to find an appropriate place to always toss a ball, but at the same time, we don't want that to get warped into something entirely different, which is why we ask them to go to a skin field.
Right, understood. Anyone else on this topic? No, we're still on new business, and I see on the agenda pickleball. Nancy, why don't you take it from here?
Well, I think there was, over the past couple of years, there have been people approaching the commission about pickleball courts. And at the last meeting, Dee suggested that we send that desire either individually or as a commission to the people deciding the capital expenditures. And so I feel there's a need for the improved pickleball facilities. And as the letters even that came in prior to this meeting, the other towns are accommodating, and but Trumbull, we sort of have an issue with the courts. We evidently Unity, they're not all playable. There's a couple at Tashua. So I think it moving forward, with the population aging and the popularity of the sport, and the gentleman that addressed the commission earlier. I think young people, I know they're teaching in gym classes. I think it's just going to get really popular. I remember the very first time someone came to talk about pickleball some years ago, we kind of chuckled because it's kind of a silly name, but it's really popular. And I think, you wouldn't want to remove the tennis courts. Ideally, it'd be nice to have dedicated pickleball courts. But I think that it should be considered when they're improving the tennis courts that are in need of repair anyway. So I didn't know if that's something we would put up to a vote to endorse as a whole commission, or if I would just send a letter as an individual. So, thoughts?
Vicki, go ahead.
Yeah, if I could just speak to that, it's Vicki Tesoro, First Selectman. Just a little history about my support and being an advocate of pickleball. Many years ago, because it is many years ago now, probably at least 5 or 6 years ago, I came before this commission advocating for pickleball for seniors, because it really was a senior sport at that time. And that was when our first courts were lined for pickleball back in 2000. And Dimitri will remember better than I do what year that was, 2014, 15, I don't recall. But I did advocate and fight for that, to have that done. Last year in our capital plan, we had originally put funding in there to take the courts, 2 courts at Unity, and make them dedicated pickleball courts. Unfortunately, due to COVID and having to make some hard decisions last year, we removed that funding from the capital plan. It is my intention this year to put it back in, so that we will look to take 2 of those tennis courts at Unity and make them dedicated pickleball courts. And hopefully that will survive the capital plan process. That will go into the initial 5-year capital plan and then into the 1-year bonding authorization that has to go through both the Board of Finance and the Town Council. So it certainly would be helpful if your commission would like to take a position on that and come to speak to it when it is on the agenda for both the 5-year plan and the 1-year authorization when that goes forward. So right now, that's my intention, is to put that back in and advocate for those courts at Unity to be changed into dedicated pickleball. So the 4 pickleball courts at Unity.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Great.
That is great.
Wait, so that would be 4 pickleball, 2 dedicated and then 2 combination?
No. One tennis court. A pickleball court fits on half of a standard tennis court. So a standard tennis court would accommodate 2 pickleball courts. So we'd only have to take 2 existing courts and create 4 pickleball courts.
In terms of the actual construction of those courts, the space is already defined down there. And so the renovation of those courts really would only need to have sleeves put into them at very specific locations. So if pickleball were something that waned in popularity, if we had the sleeves built into the courts for tennis, you just rearrange it. It has the ability to be any and all of them, and it's the cost to do something like that is de minimis in terms of the overall construction cost. It's nothing. So we can make it anything when we go the next round, and that was always the plan. You might actually be able to have 6 spaces down there for pickleball if we lay it out correctly. But either way, when we eventually renovate those courts, we'll have the ability to make them either or.
You could even look at Wolf Park, which has both. They have tennis courts that have lines for both, and then they have a tennis court that's been turned over to 2 pickleball courts with the original net still there, which is kind of helpful to separate the courts.
Dimitri, is this something that you can alternate as the season goes on? Because I know the high school JV teams all play at Unity, the tennis teams. So would they be losing out on courts there for the high school? Like when the tennis season happens, could you flip it back to tennis for the high school team?
If it's laid out the way that I described, you could do it in a day. It's just literally swapping out the tennis net posts. It's done in other locations. It's just taking it into consideration at the initial construction that there may be need for both. That's all.
Okay, anyone else on this topic, or do we want a motion that we, support Nancy and as a commission would like to endorse this?
I would make that motion that we support the improvement to the courts and expansion of the pickleball programs throughout the town. And I would say that the commission has always supported pickleball.
Mhm.
We go back for 2 years discussing this. The issue is, where do we allow these people to play? And, whether it's because of bonding or whether it's because of conditions or funding, the public really doesn't want to hear that. After 2 years, I think we need to come up with a more strident plan in getting this done. Again, I support Nancy's position on this. I think it's unanimous with the commission, but we also need the facilities.
I'll second that, Ken.
Okay, all in favor? Hand vote? Unanimous. Okay, another topic with pickleball in that email was parking for the out-of-town pickleballers. And I remember this coming up before. And we spoke of oftentimes when the pickleballers are playing, it's, in the morning and during the week. And parking wasn't that much of an issue. Has it been an issue over there with the Rangers, kicking the pickleball people out or ticketing them?
No. We have that well under control. All the people that are attempting to play know where they should park and when they should park there. And we essentially are looking at that as a permitted activity in that location as if it was anything else. And that's essentially like a no-fly zone for ticketing for that period of time.
Okay, because the signs in the park do say you need a permit though, so I could see where there'd be confusion.
No, it's like anything else, you need the permits where the permits are applicable, but we're not, if we were having full gatherings at a Little League game and folks came in from out of town, that permitted event, they would not ticket during that event because it's understood that there could be people from different towns there. So that's a standard policy.
Yes, that's what I remember from prior discussion, and that makes sense. Okay, so at least we're on the same page there. Okay, anything else under new business? Okay, next, superintendent's report. Do you forwarded it? Do you have anything to add?
No, just answer any questions the commission may have.
I do have a question, Dee, thank you. And I noticed here, and I went through Unity today as well, where Asplund has been taking down trees because of the right of way for the utility company. And that's fine, but I wanted to get a better understanding of what you expect them to do in terms of the final improvements or replacement or changes to the changes they've made. And also, while I was there, I counted like 16 or 17 cars that were parked at Unity.
Mhm.
And then I looked across and there were only 2 people playing tennis on the court. And now I'm not understanding why those cars are parked there if no one's in the park.
No, I can explain. So those are actually 2 different things, actually. So Asplund, I've given them the ability to mobilize in the park in the morning. So those cars that you see there are actually Asplund workers that are doing line to site clearing throughout the town. Asplund didn't do any of the work inside Unity. Asplund's just mobilized out of the lower portion of the parking lot every morning because it's faster for them to get to Trumbull, or else they would be losing upwards of an hour just getting here or being able to do the work. So that's just it's a courtesy for the work that they're doing in the town, and they've been very helpful to the town in general for that consideration. So that's what Asplund's doing there, and the cars you saw are the workers for Asplund. The Northeast Utility Lines is the straight out edge to edge of their easement clearing all the way on their high tension lines. They've definitely left a mark on the Bayberry side, and some of the residents are rather shell shocked at this point. I've spent the better part of the day talking to a number of them as to what's going to happen and what they're going to be able to do themselves or in concert with whatever remediation the utility is willing to give them. My conversations with them, the utility companies rather, is they have very limited parameters of remediation. They use very small plants when they are willing to install them at all. You can't do anything of any height within the easement lines, and so in this particular instance, the distance from their easement, the Eversource easement, and the back edge of the resident's property line as it butts up into a drainage ditch is non-existent. So if you saw it, they're wide open to the park now, with very little that can be done unless they were to actually plant out their own property on the interior of their property to try to get some screening. We're trying to clean up as much of it as we can because well, not only is it wide open, it was an ugly mess filled with stumps and debris. So we're trying to improve the view for the neighborhood. We're going to try to plant closer to the baseball field to try to give some screening there, because I'm not allowed to plant within that easement corridor either. If I do, they'll just cut them down. So it's a bit of a problem. We really don't have the ideal solution here, but we're trying to work with them, both the utility company, but most importantly the Bayberry residents, to try to improve what's been done.
It's really a shame because they took the tree line down, and
Yep.
now you have the residents on Bayberry are now completely exposed, to the ball fields, which
Yep.
I mean, in some cases that's positive activity, but now we're all looking at a time of year when there are no lights there. So what happens in the season when the fields are being used? They have no protection. Where I think that there really should be, I think, a further discussion, with the utility company, if at all possible, to do something, maybe outside of what their typical plan is. Maybe there's these green giant arborvitae or something to give them some protection. Basically, now they have a full exposure to not only the power lines, but also the fields, and look, I'm in the business and I know how that affects value and resaleability. It's just not right.
I agree. I mean, I have done everything thus far within my power before they took the first tree down to limit that, and I was an abject failure in that regard. I met with their horticulturalist after they tore everything down and pointed out exactly what you were talking about. We're doing, meaning the town, a substantial amount of remediation. So because the work that they're going to do is just substandard as far as I'm concerned.
Right. Let me ask this question. Is the utility company, are they wavered in terms of coming to the Parks Commission? In other words,
Yes.
there's activity in the park, there's work that's being done there, actually, negative activity as far as I'm concerned.
Cura gives them the full right to do anything within that easement range, and it's a very large swath. Technically, it's 30 to 40 feet off the edge of their power lines, so it's well over 100 feet edge to edge that they're given full right to do whatever they feel necessary, and that's what they just did.
It doesn't look very good, that's for sure.
No, it is problematic, and as I said, I am still awaiting, another response to trying to petition Eversource to plant on the resident's property, because right within feet of that easement line, it's over for them in terms of what their concerns would be for encroachment. But you're absolutely right. Running in a line of green giants or something right at that point would be a substantial improvement to the quality of life of a good 5 or 6 households. It's kind of maddening when you actually got to see it. They cut down a Japanese maple. The Japanese maple was 15 feet high. That tree wouldn't ever encroach on those power lines ever. Never, ever, ever. It was gone within seconds. And really seriously impacted all of those residents.
What about fencing? I mean, would they agree to that? Or at least you have 6 foot, restrictions on fence height, but that at least would give the homeowner protection against the back line, and then they could do their own plantings alongside of it. They do this along the highways. They do this along, other, locations.
They refuse to put up any structure within the easement line. Same conversation.
Mhm.
They're going to plant some some grasses, like yay, and that I don't really understand what the what the purpose was, but that's their remediation plan. It is somehow an aesthetic improvement, but it has nothing to do with blocking, screening, line of sight. Right now, actually, without that, there are light the night utility lights all through Unity Park. Those residents are getting the full blitz every single night, not just the from that, much less the actual ball field lights from Unity 1 or Babe Ruth. There's Cobra heads and floodlights all through Unity that they now see.
Really
Not a
not.
good.
Thank you for explaining that. Hopefully they'll do something about it.
Keep trying.
Right, anyone else for Dimitri? Superintendent's report. No? Another note, I have to admit, I was the one who asked Laura to move the meeting to 7:30, so if you guys want to go back to 7, that's okay. I know I don't get out of the office often until after 6:30, so I said with the fact that we're going to have less public comment, maybe we could start the meeting at 7:30, because I know some guys come late and straggle in, but if you people want to start it at 7, no problem.
Really don't care what time it starts, as long as both the agenda on the website and the Zoom meeting coincide. So I think we just need to get on the same page there.
Anytime is fine with me.
Does anybody have a preference? Because it doesn't matter to me either. I'm afraid of, being late, that's all. Mike, you all right?
Yeah, just as long as it's consistent. That was the confusion.
Okay,
That's all good.
right. And the reason I changed it was because of the Zoom mode. I believe if we go back to in-person meetings, we'll make it 7 o'clock again, because we'll be having more public comment, which takes more time. Okay, anything else? All right, I guess that's it. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Just a minute. So there were no division reports for the Rangers or Recreation, and I'm not sure why that's the case. I mean, that would be helpful in knowing maybe what happened with a couple of these issues with the fellow in the park throwing the ball and the woman that was thrown out because she didn't have a park sticker. I mean, that would be, I think, interesting to know. I'm just not sure why we don't have a Ranger report this month.
The Ranger report really is because Steve was away for the last week, and so he didn't get it in on time. So because it was after the deadline, there was no point for me to actually submit it to you. But he did submit a report this morning, so I do have some detail, but it's still, there were a lot more questions of what was happening in the last week because he wasn't around. So my apologies to the commission, and Steve issues it as well. That won't be the norm.
I do believe those 2 issues happened over the last day or so, which probably wouldn't be in that report anyway. Okay, anything else? Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn? Ken, second. Nancy and Mike, John, Bill. Okay. All right, good night. Thanks for attending.